Bloomberg Tech is live from coast to coast with Caroline Hyde in New York and Ed Ludlow in San Francisco.
This is Bloomberg Tech. I'm Caroline Hyde in New York.
And I'm Ed Ludlow, live in Cupertino from Apple. It's the company's biggest product launch event of the year, and we're waiting for the next generation of iPhones, smartwatches, and much more, Caro.
And let's just talk about what Apple is already pricing in from a market valuation perspective, Ed. Look, on the day, we've got a myriad of news that investors are trying to stomach. They've got geopolitical news with Israel, of course, attack on Qatar, a very strategic strike. We've got NASDAQ just currently flat on the day. I'm looking at Apple off by 0.6% as perhaps we bought the news into this unveil. Usually stock does sink after a product launch, and this one is the iPhone 17, Ed. But let's look at it on a longer term basis. This company has added $430 billion in market capitalization since the end of July alone. We have really rallied, not enough to bring it green in a year-to-date perspective, though, Ed, but that's because we continue to worry about trade and so many other overhangs.
The way I think about it, world's third most valuable company, half of revenue is iPhone. Apple's biggest product launch of the year is today, and the company, which has fallen behind in the generative AI race, will focus on hardware, show off the new iPhone 17 range. Let's bring in Bloomberg's global consumer tech managing editor, Mark Gurman. The basics, 17 base model through Pro and Pro Max, and in the middle, a 17 Air. Per your reporting. Explain the features that come with the 17 Air, Mark, but also why does that matter?
The 17 Air, that's going to be the big deal today. This is a slimmed down phone. On paper, it's a third thinner than the other new iPhones that you're going to see today. And this is an entirely new industrial design. It's something brand new for the company. They have not done an Air phone to this point. Obviously, there's the MacBook Air, there's the iPad Air, and now there's going to be the iPhone Air. This is going to be a pricey phone, not as pricey as the Pro models, but it's going to be quite expensive, right? Somewhere between $900 and around $1,000, give or take. It's going to only have one camera. It's going to have drastically less battery life than the Pro models, but this is going to be exciting. It's going to get people really interested in the phones this year. It's going to help draw people to Apple stores. It's going to give Apple a way to have a big marketing push going to the holiday season. But in my view, as I've written, the most popular phones will still remain the Pro phones, and those Pro phones will also still be the most practical new iPhones because of the better battery life, performance, and cameras.
A lot of this, as you told us yesterday, is sort of a warm-up act to a foldable phone, having to make it as slim as possible and redesigning that camera. Tell us about some of the health perks that we're going to be getting. You've got a whole new lineup of smartwatches. We've also got AirPods really lifting their game.
So the AirPods Pro 3, that is going to be a health-centric upgrade. Last year, they added hearing health features. This year, they're adding heart health features. So you're going to have a heart rate monitor in the AirPods for the first time. This is interesting for people who want to work out with their earbuds, which obviously is an extraordinarily common use case. But people who don't have Apple Watches, right? The Apple Watch, right? If you're like me, you have an Apple Watch. It has a heart rate monitor on there. But the total addressable market, because of the price and the more ubiquitous nature of the earbuds category, will bring heart rate to more Apple customers. And if you're an Android user, right, you might find that to be an easier way to get into the Apple ecosystem as well through the AirPods. So definitely a big upgrade there. The smartwatches, you're going to see the biggest overhaul to the Apple Watch lineup in 3 years. So you're going to see updates to the SE, which is their low-cost sub-$300 watch. You're going to see a Series 11, minor, after the big Series 10 overhaul last year. And then a pretty big update, the biggest update ever to the Apple Watch Ultra, slightly bigger screen, 5G red cap, so faster internet connectivity. Big thing, satellite capabilities. So if you are on the go in a mountain range without cellular connectivity and you don't have your phone with satellite, now your watch, the Ultra Watch, will have it. Apple is going squarely today after Fitbit and Garmin.
Mark, pricing is going to be a story either way, right? Either Apple raises prices, passes it on to the consumer, or they don't. They eat that cost, largely relating to tariffs. And then the carriers come in with trade-in deals. What do we know about those three factors?
Yeah, so the pricing is interesting. You're right. Either way, it's going to be noteworthy. It's interesting because Samsung and Google both recently rolled out new phones, and they did not increase their prices. So the precedent is not set there for Apple to raise the prices, even though they do have the air cover of tariffs. If they do raise prices, they're not really going to get into it, but if they did, my bet would be they explain it away as this is the first redesign, major camera upgrades, new processors, whatever. They're not going to blame Trump and tariffs because as we all know, that is a no-no with this administration. In terms of carrier deals, I am expecting an extraordinary amount of trade-in specials and deals from all the major carriers in the U.S. Apple has been working the last several months with these carriers to ensure that there are major deals in place. To me, that implies there will be some tweaks to the pricing strategy, and this could be positioned as a way to offset any of those changes.
Bloomberg's Mark Gurman, who will be with us on the network for coverage throughout the day. Thank you very much. Let's get more. Carolina Milanesi, President and Principal Analyst at Creative Strategies. You have a Galaxy S25 Edge handset. It is the Samsung slim, thin phone.
Yep.
It is a segment. So you've got Mark's reporting there on a 17 Air. Again, why does it matter?
For Samsung, it was clearly a stepping stone to a much thinner Fold 7. They didn't put a lot of marketing behind the product. To your point, is a segment. It's not consumers are screaming for thinner phones. But we also haven't seen much difference in design for a long time. You know, all the phones kind of look the same. The thing that changes the most is the back, where the camera is. So it'd be interesting to see if the rumors are right that Apple is changing that part of the phone because it's going to be very obvious that you have a new model of your iPhone. But yes, the thinner phone is something that vendors seem to be doing to lead their way to a foldable, which would make me wrong about Apple doing a foldable iPad before a foldable iPhone, which was always my theory.
Your theory on foldable, though, is one that we listen to because eventually we do anticipate a foldable phone from Apple, but they lag there behind competition. And of course, everyone says they lag behind on generative AI. Does that matter to a consumer?
Sorry, I missed the last of the question,
Does that matter,
Carolina? Apologies.
Does that matter to the consumer, the Gen AI lacking?
I don't think that consumers are going into a store asking for AI. And I think what plays in Apple's favor, although they don't have a ton of time, is the fact that there's the assurance that when they're ready, the software will come with all the phones that you already have. So if consumers are drawn to this year's models because of the change in hardware design, they know, they have peace of mind in going in and buying now, knowing that when Apple Intelligence redesign will happen, they will have access to it.
Carolina, what do we know from third-party data, from consumer trends, about what happened after iPhone 16 launch, particularly on Pro? You heard Mark explain that whatever happens with pricing, the carriers will come out and say, trade in your handset. Lots of people get really frustrated, particularly in the USA, where they say, I only just got a 16 Pro. Is there going to be enough in the capability to drive me, even with a trade-in, to upgrade?
Yes, last year's upgrade from the carriers were very aggressive. The trade-in pricing was really good for consumers. I think, as always, you have a segment of the market that is going to hold on to their phone no matter what. Where it really makes a difference is the early adopters that will get that bump. Usually, the hardware redesign really drives a lot of upgrades, and I think that between what we've seen as rumor colors and then the thin design, people will get into the store. Whether or not they'll decide to buy, we'll see, depending on pricing, as you just discussed with Mark.
May I ask in a quick fire round, how many iPhone events have you been to?
Oh my God, since 2007, so
many.
A long time.
We always say this is the biggest event for Apple in the year. I put it back to basics. iPhone is more than half of revenue. But this idea of a 17 generation with a thin, an Air thrown in the middle, where do you think that ranks in the history of the sort of storied Apple launches?
I think to me, if it's true that this is a stepping stone to foldable, is a moment that is going to redefine the next generation. It'll be interesting to see how much they get into the architecture of the actual device, what have they changed, how they are redesigned. Making something thin is really hard when it comes to the phone, from battery size to not compromise your battery life, which was the biggest drawback for Samsung, and then the camera capability. You cannot have the same camera set as you do on a Pro Max. So how do you reinvent your camera to make sure that there's no compromise for people that care?
Carolina, talk to us about caring on wearables. How important are the new iterations of AirPods, of the watches, going to be for you?
I think they're really important, and there is a reason why Apple always does these three products together, because it is the trifecta of what being mobile is. I do think that the heart rate monitoring on the AirPods, if true, is going to be really interesting for Apple. There are people who don't want to wear a watch, or people that cannot afford to add that to their list of products that they own. And so having AirPods allowing you to work out and do what you need, you will see, my guess is a strong upgrade from regular AirPods to AirPod Pro. And so nice revenue uptake for Apple.
What about to the bottom line? What about pushing up the price points of these?
It'll be interesting to see if they're pushing up the price point. I agree totally with Mark that they cannot blame it on tariff. If they do, there is the precedent of both Google and Samsung not raising prices. So it'll be really hard for them to do that. I also do think that they're a moment where they want to make sure that their install base upgrades to the latest devices so that they have the latest chipset. That, at the end of the day, is what is going to matter for Apple Intelligence and AI in general.
Carolina, when you're sat in the Steve Jobs Theatre, what is the one thing, the absolute focus for you in that moment that you're tracking?
I'm still looking at how Apple brings everything together so that consumers stay tied to the ecosystem. That is going to be their biggest ticket to winning when it comes to AI.
Carolina Milanese, President, Principal Analyst at Creative Strategies. She's going to be back on Bloomberg again after Apple's keynote this afternoon. So stay tuned. Meanwhile, coming up, Europe's AI infrastructure company, Nebius, soaring after it said it will provide Microsoft access to GPU infrastructure capacity. This is Bloomberg Tech. NVIDIA, it plans to offer a new product design to make certain types of AI work more efficient, such as video generation and software creation. Now, the product, called Rubin CPX, will debut at the end of 2026 and will be offered in the form of cards that can be incorporated into existing server computer designs or used in discrete computers that can operate separately alongside other hardware in data centers, Ed.
Elsewhere in AI, a massive infrastructure deal between Microsoft and Europe's Nebius, worth as much as $19.4 billion. NeoCloud Nebius, recently spun off from Russia's tech giant Yandex, will provide compute to Microsoft from a data center in New Jersey. Let's get out to Bloomberg's Matt Day, who covers Microsoft for us. And Matt, let's start with what Microsoft gets out of this cloud arrangement.
So they get access to a whole bunch of NVIDIA GPUs that Nebius is set to receive and fire up in New Jersey. They also get some optionality, right? They've been spending a ton of money on their own data center construction. They've also been throwing some to partners. This is maybe a way for them to grow that portfolio without so much of the risk if they'd been buying all the stuff themselves.
Meanwhile, Nebius really making its name in NeoCloud, offering extraordinary storied business where it spun out of Yandex, of course, post Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The CEO backs away and now has this new European-based juggernaut that's all things AI.
Yeah, out of nowhere, right? And it's a huge vote of confidence in the Yandex brass and some of the staffers who left Russia to set up this this rebranded holding company. Yeah, quite a bet on a name that just didn't have a whole lot going for it here a couple of years ago.
Matt, you've got to get back to your desk because in the time you've been in the seat, some news from Microsoft, a change in RTO policy. Do you have the details?
Yeah, it looks like 3 days a week, starting in Puget Sound, rolling out later to the rest of the U.S. and then abroad. Microsoft had been a pretty lax hand on this, sort of recommending 2 days a week, but it really varied by team. Some teams hadn't RTO'd at all, so it looks like they're kind of following some of the folks like Amazon who have taken a harder line on getting folks back into the office.
I mean, it doesn't seem to have set them back in terms of market valuation, in terms of performance thus far, Matt. But how much is there the fierce talent wars upon Microsoft weighing, as well as some of the other names that we think about?
Oh, for sure. And I think for some who would argue that Microsoft's previous arrangement's working well, it's been a recruiting advantage for them, right? Particularly here in Seattle, where both Microsoft and Amazon are based. You could say, hey, listen, if you don't want to have to commute to the office 5 days a week, Microsoft's your bet. A little bit less advantage there, but they still are, relatively flexible by big tech standards.
Bloomberg's Matt Day, all things Microsoft and Nebius. We appreciate it. Look, let's talk about the Dutch chip-making equipment company ASML now. It's investing $1.5 billion in France's Mistral AI. This is a pretty unusual move. It's going to allow ASML to incorporate Mistral's generative AI services in its own machinery and operations. It makes ASML the largest shareholder in Mistral with an 11% stake. Bloomberg's Benoit Berthelot is here for more from Paris. It is the pin-up generative AI business, Mistral, for France. ASML coming in, taking such a stake. What does it mean for the French government?
It's obviously super important to French and I would say to European tech, because now Mistral is probably the only European tech startup that's doing language models, AI language models, and that has a full suite of products, also doing computing here. So it's definitely key, and key is also the fact that it's a European tech giant, ASML, investing in Mistral. Mistral previously got backing from US venture funds. People were doubting that they could continue to grow and raise capital with the European backers. And this is the case now. And it's important for Mistral because obviously we've got these giants like OpenAI and X, etc., doing the leading language models now. But there are European companies choosing to cut deals with Mistral because they're European and they see it as a sovereignty or strategic independence issue to make this contract. Right. And it's important for them for this reason. So it's extremely key for that reason, yeah.
Benoit, ASML participated in that broader funding round, valuing Mistral at almost 12 billion euros. That's the finance part. But there's a technology story here too, right? What is it that each company is partnering on in the technology sense?
So in a way, they are on both ends of the AI value chain, right? ASML is really at the top of the value chain, really doing these very powerful and sophisticated machines, the only one in the world to do these machines, allowing chip makers to do very advanced chips. They have NVIDIA, they are powering NVIDIA, for example, and Mistral is really at the end selling AI products. So Mistral, for example, he's a customer of NVIDIA because they've got data centers that they're building in Europe to train their models. So what they say of this deal, it's a bit of a surprising deal in a way, but what they say on the ASML sides is that it's going to be for them a way to incorporate AI into the whole company, and ASML is going to use Mistral AI to improve the scanning of data, to improve really its core products, to improve efficiency. So that's what they're telling for now. But it's going to be interesting to follow what they're going to do.
Yes.
And they might use other AI companies, but they choose Mistral and they choose to back this company.
Well, it immediately made everyone think maybe ASML eventually wants to buy it. But there was pushback from the CEO on that.
Yeah, he said they don't want to incorporate every technology they use. They don't want to integrate that into their company. So it looks like a pushback for sure. The founders of Mistral and employees, Mistral says they still have the majority of the company. So for sure it doesn't seem to be on the cards. It's already a very sizable investment for ASML because they haven't done that kind of venture deals before. So it's already something unusual for them in a way to do.
Bloomberg's Benoit Berthelot in Paris, thank you very much. Now, coming up here on Bloomberg Technology, a new big tech association is trying to mend the relationship between Silicon Valley and the Democratic Party. We have those details next. This is Bloomberg Tech.
A tech association funded by the likes of Apple and Google and other major tech companies, well, it's launching a new initiative to strengthen the frayed relationship between Democrats and Silicon Valley, all ahead of the 2026 midterm elections. And Bloomberg's Emily Birnbaum, who covers corporate lobbying for us, has that story. Look, support for the Trump administration, it has spiked among tech executives. So what does the Chamber of Progress hope to achieve here?
Yes, they say that that movement, that rightward shift in Silicon Valley is in part due to a reaction to the Biden administration's policies, which were much more skeptical and critical of big tech and AI companies. So they say, we're here to do some relationship counseling. Silicon Valley was once associated with Democrats. They want to bring us back to that more, Obama tech-friendly era.
Emily, I'm live here at Apple Park in Cupertino, and in the story we note that Apple is one of a number of technology companies helping to fund this association. In the last week, we've seen Tim Cook at the table with the president discussing the almost quid pro quo of investing in America in return for sort of policy relief. I gave you that backdrop because I just want to understand who's involved here on the company side and the Democratic side away from the association itself.
Yeah, the association has hired a Democrat who has relationships with tech companies. So that's Dave Vorland from the Department of Defense. And when I asked which companies specifically signed off on this, Democratic projects held under the Chamber of Progress, they said they couldn't say specifically, but they pointed to their members. They said their members have they are also interested in looking ahead to a potentially more democratically controlled Washington, and they want to start thinking about what it's going to look like when Trump is no longer in power.
Emily, it's going to be quite a major reset, because you just go back to the previous administration and how CEO after CEO really felt that they were either being investigated or being fined. What's the next steps to rectify it?
Well, different people have different opinions on this. It's contested within the Democratic Party if this is something to fix. But, if you're Chamber of Progress, if you're a tech-friendly Democrat, then I think first steps would be at least hearing out industry more. There was kind of a blanket policy in the Biden administration not to even speak to tech on issues that might impact them for fear of corporate capture. Right. I think it would also be, not having as strong M&A policies and things like that.
Bloomberg's Emily Birnbaum, thank you very much. So coming up here on Bloomberg Tech, we get back on what to expect from Apple's iPhone 17 launch, live from right here in Cupertino. This is Bloomberg Tech.
Welcome back to Bloomberg Tech. I'm Caroline Hyde in New York.
And I'm Ed Ludlow live in Cupertino from Apple. It is iPhone day. I think it's worth thinking about the stock, Caro, right? It's normal not just to see the stock treading water in advance of the presentation, but for it to be a sell the news kind of event overall. Year to date, the stock's down almost 6%, but since the end of July, Apple's had a big rally. Some of the political issues behind it, some of the tariff questions partly put to bed, but not completely. And now the overhang is what happens with AI. We don't expect anything from that today. I'm also thinking about what historically happens on iPhone day. Yes, sell the news, but in the 30-day or 60-day period afterwards, we do sometimes see that stock rally where the handset of that generation has had a warm reception with the consumer. We're in the fiscal fourth quarter, we're entering the holiday period of the fiscal first quarter. That's why we're here, tracking the third most valuable company in the world and the latest handsets. What are you looking at?
We're looking at another stock that's rallied hard going into today, Oracle. Its earnings are out after the bell. Bloomberg Intelligence senior software analyst Anurag Rana writing that solid recent results from Microsoft and CoreWeave, they bode well for Oracle's own cloud infrastructure business when it reports earnings. Anurag joins us now for more. The key question is whether the news is going to be strong enough to vindicate the run-up in the stock. What strength do you want on fundamentals, Anurag?
Yeah, I think that is absolutely right. We really have a lot of that's already baked into expectations going in. But the big question is going to be how much capital expenditures I have to go up in order to take care of these, backlog that is going to be extremely strong when Oracle reports tonight. What kind of funding they need, when will it go live? So there's a lot of supply chain as well as financing questions, not so much demand issues at this point.
Anurag, Oracle to me has been a bit of a surprise story. The relationship with OpenAI and Stargate. it's also just sort of getting a lot of wins. How much has it surprised you when you put it in the context of that broader field of, let's call them, hyperscalers?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. So when you go back to 2018, when we started looking at the OCI infrastructure build up, we were surprised that why Larry is spending so much money. Why not just, work with the hyperscalers to expand its database business, which is the cash cow and the high margin business. But frankly speaking, his bet was right, because right now, the question is, where can I get compute? And frankly speaking, they are now the fourth largest cloud providers in terms of size. The next few years, they're going to generate $20–30 billion from it. So it's fairly lucrative business. Right now, the margins are low, but over time, we anticipate that to improve as well.
I mean, going back to their last earnings, we learned the $30 billion per year run rate we're going to get from one client alone. We all anticipate, of course, that was OpenAI. Are we going to hear any major victories once again in terms of new clients, or is it going to be more just showing the proof in the AI infrastructure revenue growth?
Yeah, Oracle is very good at detailing the number of customers it has gained every quarter. So we do anticipate a laundry list of that. But frankly speaking, the biggest question is, when can you get these data centers up and live and running? And when do you start recognizing this backlog into revenue and improve on the growth rate, which has already gone from, there was a time they were growing at sub 5%, and now it's going to be low double digits, moving towards middle double digit growth rate. So very good for Oracle shareholders and management team.
Anurag Rana of Bloomberg Intelligence setting us up for Oracle after the bell. Thank you very much. It is iPhone Day here in Cupertino at Apple. Samantha Kelly recently joining Bloomberg's consumer tech team. We have this squad now, but you know how this works. Let's start with the basics. What is it that you are looking out for and that you think is going to be the big story here?
Yeah, thank you for having me. So Apple is a master of, stagery, basically. I just walked in a little while ago. Everyone said, enjoy the show. And I think it's a reminder that this day is as almost about theatrics as it is about the tech aspect. So we're here to, listen to what they have to unveil, we test it out, and we kind of decipher, there's a lot of hype around it. Sometimes they might say, a certain feature might represent, the whole new wave of what's to expect. But is that the case? How does that translate to why is it impactful to people? Will it really impact the industry? And does it really actually matter?
When it comes to questioning if it really matters, many feel it's the Air that really matters to show the next leap forward in a foldable phone. Is that right for you, Sam? Are you excited to get your hand on the Air?
I'm definitely excited to see it, that's for sure. I do think whether or not it translates to whether people actually need something like that, again, it's going to be a lot slimmer, but what does that mean for battery life? What does it mean for the camera system? Kind of will sit in this murky spot in between the entry-level iPhone and higher-end iPhone. But of course, why does it exist anyway? Could perhaps lead the way to thinner, perhaps foldable devices down the line. So definitely interested to see how the form factor impacts the functionality as well.
We perhaps assume or take for granted that everyone knows what's going to happen, but the basics are 10 a.m. local time, 1 p.m. New York time, a keynote, a presentation.
Yeah.
Take it from there. How does Apple usually do it? Do they just sort of come up front and say, okay, here's all the stuff? Do they tease things out?
Yeah, what's interesting is it's changed in recent years. Before COVID, we used to come out here and it was a live presentation, a lot of excitement around that. What will they announce? Will the demo even work? More authentic. During COVID, they switched to live streams. A lot of other companies did that. A lot of companies have since switched back, but Apple is still doing the pre-recorded streaming. So it depends, wherever you are in the world watching, you're going to see what we're sitting in the lawn chairs watching. So what's different here is Tim Cook usually addresses the audience, says a few words, we watch the live stream, and then we get funneled into another room. We're able to try out, have some minutes with the devices for the first time, and that allows us to see sort of what they're conveying and how it translates to touch.
Sam, people love the people behind these stories. And we know that actually a lot of key talent has been being lost from Apple, but largely in the AI sphere. Who are we going to see getting up on a pre-recorded stage today? Who's going to be making an impact?
Yes, that's a great question. So of course, it'll be introductions by Tim Cook, who will be throughout the entire presentation, and then the leads around the different products. So again, we're expecting new iPhones, we're expecting Apple Watches, we might see some new AirPods, HomePods, so the respective leads will join. But what's interesting too is sort of before the event, you can kind of see some key players in the audience. Last year, I remember there was some buzz about whether or not there was going to be an OpenAI partnership, and just moments before the live stream, we saw Sam Altman walking around the grounds. So it's always really kind of exciting to see sort of who might play a part and what that means for the announcements later in the day.
Bloomberg, Samantha Kelly, we so appreciate you being live for us from Cupertino today, ready to get your hands on some of the new devices. Meanwhile, coming up, we're going to be joined by the Cisco Chief Product Officer to discuss the company's latest agentic AI announcements. This is Bloomberg Tech. Now, amid the frenzy of demand for AI infrastructure, companies are focused on monitoring its impact, crucially, the security and the cost of their AI application stack. That's including infrastructure, but also LLMs and agents. Now, Cisco is today unveiling new Splunk enterprise solutions to do just this. 18 months after Cisco's acquisition of Splunk, the teams are revealing further product innovation focused on actionable AI. And here to discuss it all, Cisco's Chief Product Officer, Jeetu Patel, at Splunk's user conference. Jeetu, what is it that you really think Cisco can offer a world in which AI agents are going to be running left, right, and center?
Caroline, it's good to see you again. Thank you for having me on the show. Look, if you take a step back, we are probably witnessing one of the most seismic shifts that we've seen in humanity with AI. And we're now squarely in the second phase of AI, where you're moving from these chatbots that intelligently answered questions to agents that are going to conduct tasks and jobs almost fully autonomously to automate workflows. Now, as that happens, we start to think about like, what are the constraints and impediments that might actually really limit the growth of AI? And we think there are three big constraints. First one is infrastructure, where you just don't have enough power, compute, networking, bandwidth to go out and satiate the demand for AI.
Yeah.
The second is a trust deficit, where if you don't trust these systems, you're not going to use them. And so you have to make sure that the safety and security is really well thought through. And the third one is a data gap. And in all these three areas, Splunk actually plays a pretty big role. We happen to be at the user conference of Splunk in Boston, and we've just made some pretty amazing announcements around what we're going to be able to do specifically around machine data and AI. Like so far, AI has been really good with human data and training models on human-generated data that's publicly available on the internet. What they've not been as good at is machine data.
Yeah.
And so what we want to do is make sure that we can actually have the time series machine data also be used to train these models. And we're excited about all the innovations that we've had so far.
I mean, Jeetu, as the product innovator here, how is it that what is the technological feats that you have to do working alongside Splunk? What is it that you have to drive that's different from others?
I feel like that formula is pretty simple, Caroline. It's like, in tech, you just have to be relentlessly obsessed about continuing to innovate and making sure that you keep listening to customers and creating solutions that are at least an order of magnitude better than what's available in the market. No one switches to you for 10% better. You have to be at least an order of magnitude better. And so we have this rule internally called be 10x better, and you're going to actually make sure the customers will get excited. And we saw that level of palpable energy today and at the event where all of our customers were just completely excited about the machine data lake announcement we made. We made an announcement around an open source model for time series data. These are all really hard problems that actually require a level of assistance so that organizations can harness the full potential of AI because of the way that they can use data.
Jeetu, is there evidence that Splunk's historic customers are using Cisco's other products and signing on for deals on that side, and vice versa, since you guys have closed?
We've actually seen a lot of great evidence around it. In fact, just last quarter, we closed, one of the large financial services organizations that happened to be a great Cisco customer, is also a Splunk customer, and we replaced another competitor in that account with Splunk. And let me tell you the reason why. If you really think about where Splunk shines is correlating data across multiple different sources. And if you start thinking about the kind of data that we have, if you assume that the attacker is already in your network, and what you're trying to do is prevent lateral movement, who has the most amount of data about the network? Cisco does. The telemetry from that network, hydrating Splunk, actually gives Splunk meaningful insights. The telemetry from users and devices and the security firewalls that we might have, all of these pieces add value to Splunk. So what ends up happening is customers, when they're starting to use Cisco technology with Splunk, actually find them to not only be able to derive insights that were not able to be derived before, but you also get to be very economical in the way that you use it. And we made this one big announcement around Cisco firewall telemetry getting ingested in Splunk for free. And so that actually provides incentives from a financial perspective to our customers as well.
G2, when I speak to industry, they say it's you personally that's responsible for bringing Cisco into this AI era. So very quickly to end, I wanted to ask where you feel Cisco is today versus where you want it to be in 3 to 5 years' time, now that Splunk's being integrated.
Well, let me just start by saying that it is not just me. There's a wonderful team of people behind me that do all the work, and so I'm just lucky to be a small part of it. Where we see AI, moving forward is we're now squarely in the second phase, and we're helping companies out with massive data center build-outs, whether it be hyperscalers or neoclouds or service providers or the enterprise. And the fact that we serve all those 4 constituencies helps each one of the constituencies from the learnings that we get from each one of them. So that's the first area that we're really helping in a big way. And low latency, high performance, energy efficient networking is one of our core value propositions there. Second, we're really helping with making sure that AI is safe and secure. And by the way, what I mean by that is not just using AI for security, but securing AI itself. That's a really, really important area that we've got a tremendous amount of offerings that are helping customers out. And the third one is this notion of if 55% of the growth of data is coming from machine data, and the market has not really gone out and figured out how to use machine data effectively with AI, that's the problem that we want to solve. And that's where we've actually made these announcements with Splunk. And so the combination of those 3 technologies coming together in a unified platform is where we can really shine. And very few companies in the world have the level of breadth and depth of technology that we do. So we feel pretty fortunate about that.
Cisco's Chief Product Officer, G2 Patel, thank you very much. Now, coming up here on Bloomberg Tech, we're going to get back to today's top story, Apple's product launch. Taking a look at the company's shares, as we've discussed all day long, this is a stock that often treads water or it sees a sell the news kind of moment on iPhone day. But the devil is in the detail when it comes to the latest generation handset. We'll get to it next. This is Bloomberg Tech. I'm joined now by Nabila Popal, Senior Research Director at IDC, where she focuses on smartphones and consumer electronics. Smartphone is key. And Nabila, it's good to see you again. I want to get something we haven't yet discussed in the show, which is upgrade cycle and what it will take, the capability of an iPhone 17 generation, the features to drive an upgrade cycle. Have you modeled for that?
Absolutely. That's what we've been talking about for, I guess, as long as I can, the past few years. When is the next upgrade cycle going to come? And, we are right now looking at about a 40 plus, so almost 4-year upgrade cycle for iPhones. And this is what primes the iPhone 17. Regardless, obviously, there's big upgrades to the phone and device itself in terms of hardware. And, of course, the very anticipated and excitement around iPhone 17 Air. But regardless of all that, or on top of all that, the Apple devices themselves are looking at a major upgrade cycle coming up because we're approaching that 4-year mark. So that's what we're, baking that in.
Bloomberg's Mark Gurman reports that an iPhone 17 Air, a thin 5.5mm thickness phone, will be eSIM. And he talks about how eSIM in the Chinese market, very interesting. Why is that an important factor?
That's important because that makes it a barrier, right? Because the Chinese market right now, on top of all the other challenges that Apple is facing in terms of competition being very driven with all the AI features that they have been marketing to the hill, right? That's a big challenge for Apple, on top of the accelerated growth of Huawei and the support that they have from the government, as well as the consumer loyalty. The eSIM feature, despite the excitement that the consumers have with the ultra slim device, device, the fact that it is not going to support that is going to be another challenge. So yes, the Chinese market, we're still expecting, again, regardless of, on top of, despite the great upgrades that the 17 will bring, there is excitement in the Chinese market, but we're still expecting a decline. So it's still going to be a tough, uphill battle for Apple in China.
Nabila, how price sensitive are, well, China, if you even call it an emerging market now, but India, they've been making scale there. How much is price and ability to move higher on some of these newer and the ones you're excited about, slimmer versions?
So I'm glad you've brought India and some of these emerging markets up. I think what's interesting is that despite these markets being extremely price sensitive traditionally, right, we've seen the opposite trend. We've seen, especially in India, the largest ASP growth in history for the Indian market in Q2 right now. We saw 10% growth and the largest ASP for smartphones ever. And Apple has been seeing double-digit growth. So regardless of where the price, despite the price increases and even with the new devices that we'll see, Apple is seeing tremendous growth. And that is because of the support from financing programs that we're seeing in all of these markets.
What will steal the show? Is it all about the slimmer versions? Or will the Pro still be the standout? Will ultimately people go for more power, more battery life versus trying out something that's incredibly slim but might be better for a next generation?
Again, great question. And, for me, I think it depends. It's going to be a combination. And I think that's what Apple is doing really well. And it's an ingenious move because with the Slim, they've gotten the buzz, the marketing, and a great, lead up to the event because the Slim will hit the mark with a lot of consumers, or with few consumers actually, than the majority of consumers who are looking for camera better performance. So the Pro will hit the majority of consumers, so will generate more volume and certainly more revenue for Apple, but the Slim device will also hit the mark. So I think combined is what will lead to a bigger upgrade cycle for Apple this year, and that's why, as a result, for total, so if you look at the 17 series, we're expecting them to do bigger volume than the 16.
Very, very quickly, trade-ins, how big a factor will that be, particularly in America? Very quick.
Huge.
Okay.
Ginormous.
That's succinct, Caro. You had it there.
Nabila Pofel, it's so good to have you back on the show, Senior Research Director at IDC. We love their number crunching. Meanwhile, Ed, that does it for this edition of Bloomberg Tech, but you got more?
Yeah, stay with us throughout the news day for more on Apple. Special coverage later today, very focused on pricing. Bring in the tariffs and the political story. And as Nabila just talked about, huge factor is trade-ins.
And we're very focused on the share price, not just the price of the phones. Currently off by 0.75%, let's call it, 236. This is a company that's added $430 billion in market cap since the beginning of July alone. Can it vindicate that run-up as anxiety around supply chain perhaps has dialed down a bit? And now we want to see how much it can drive fundamentals with real hardware innovation. From New York, from Cupertino, keep all eyes on Apple, one of the most valuable companies in the world. This is Bloomberg Tech.